Good morning and welcome back to Minds Over Magic, the podcast where psychology meets romantasy. I'm Katya, a romantasy reader.
And I'm Catherine, your resident psychologist and psychotherapist.
Today we're analysing chapters 21 to 25 of Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. And guess who is back? Jack freaking Barlow. Rebecca keeps us on our toes.
And from a psychological perspective, we're looking at how we form views about people and interpret their behavior, and how people respond to pressure and manipulation, and what happens when harmful situations are framed as necessary or normal.
Quick reminder, this podcast is intended for mature audiences. Minds Over Magic may include discussion of adult themes, strong language, violence, and sexually explicit content, especially as they relate to the romantasy novels we cover. Listener discretion is advised.
And as per usual, Katya is going to give us a recap of the chapters we're discussing today.
Yes, absolutely. Let's go. So, chapter 21. Violet attempts a rolling dismount and sprains her shoulder. Now she has to wear her arm in a sling for a month. Professor De Vera tells them that the Eastern Wing is under attack and Mason has been killed. Just a reminder to our listeners, in case you forgot, Mason was another cadet who was at Ressen with Violet fighting Venin. Violet is on alert. She doesn't believe that Mason died in an enemy attack. Later, during the hand-to-hand challenges, Dain tries to speak to Violet, but she ignores him, so he chooses another tactic. He challenges Violet. All the cadets are in shock. All the readers gasp. Violet is holding her own at first, but with her arm in a sling and Dain's skills, he eventually overpowers her. He says he just wants to talk, but Violet is only worried about Dain touching her temples. During the tense exchange, Violet accuses him of stealing her memory and sending them to die, killing Liam. Dain claims he had no idea. He says he saw the memory accidentally and only shared it with his father because it didn't make sense that Bodhi would have gone to Athbeen as a second year. He also admits he never trusted Zayden's intention when it comes to Violet, especially knowing that it was Lilith who cut those 107 scars into Zayden's back. Uh-oh. To Violet's horror, Rhiannon starts catching on that there is a connection between the recent attempts on cadets and whatever happened in Ressen. She's trying to piece it together, and Violet is begging her to stop. Then comes another surprise. Arik knows about Venin, and that's the reason why he joined the Quadrant. Chapter 22. Violet continues to have nightmares about Ressen and the Venin. Zayden arrives at Basgarth, and just as he's about to take Violet to the forge, Violet and her squad are taken for RSC interrogation. Zayden tries to get her out of it, suspecting that Varrish is actually planning to kill Violet during this exercise, as punishment for the embarrassment she and Terran caused him. But there is nothing he can do, and Violet is led away. Chapter 23. The squad is put into the training facility and given a secret phase they're supposed to protect. On top of that, they all have to share one secret with each other before the interrogation starts. Rhiannon tells Sawyer and Riddick how she and Violet snuck out of Montserrat to see her parents last year. Sawyer confesses that he never told his family he had to repeat first year. Riddick admits he is scared of snakes. And Violet tells them that Poromish civilians are being killed at the border by Navarian infantry. They're given food and drink to prepare them for the grueling exercise ahead, but Violet quickly realizes that the drink contains the same bond-blocking serum they were given before, so they pour it out. The interrogation exercise is brutal, but the squad holds, and then Varrish joins them. He's not happy that no one has talked yet, so he calls in Dain. Chapter 24. Violet is panicking. She tells Zayden that Dain is there, but warns him not to come and try to save her, because it seems like this is exactly what Varrish wants. Violet realizes that Varrish has been helping Dain train his memory reading signet and now wants him to practice on her. Violet is horrified, but in the end, Dain refuses, saying that using his signet on a cadet with prior injuries is against the rules, and walks away. Varrish is disappointed, so he resumes the torture himself. Nolan is called in to mend Violet so that Varrish can break her again and again. He is clearly worried about her, as this is not normal. Nolan manages to distract Varrish and leads him away, giving the squad a chance to act. They break out using their signets and Violet's daggers that Xaden gifted her last year. Chapter 25. Violet and the squad are greeted outside by an impressed Professor Grady and receive a patch for completing their interrogation assessment. A few days later, during battle brief, someone has left leaflets all over the room claiming that the Paromish city of Zolia was attacked by blue fire dragons and that Paromish forces lost and retreated after a 2-day battle. But then Markham walks in, collects all the leaflets, and announces that it was a test, and they all failed. The leaflets are fake, and nobody spotted the propaganda. And then he brings Jack Barlow into the room, alive and well. He has been mended by Nolan. So, Catherine, what are your first impression of these chapters?
Lord. Well, what really stood out to me in these chapters
Lord, take the dragon.
Lord, take the dragon. Take Jack Barlow is really what the Lord did.
Okay.
Can't believe he came back. I was just like, what? Come on. Okay. Well, what really stood out to me was that how much of what is happening is about interpretation. So not just events themselves, but how people make meaning of them. So we're watching characters try to decide who's safe, who is dangerous, what is true, what is not. And psychologically, that's actually one of the most destabilizing places to be when you don't just fear harm, but you're unsure how to read the people around you.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's actually interesting. I was thinking along the similar lines because when you look at them like collectively, they're all over the place. Everybody has different amount of knowledge. Some of them know, like Violet obviously knows everything. Rhiannon starts guessing things. Riddick and Sawyer kind of have their suspicions about stuff that's happening. They're all like a different level of understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's quite interesting. But let's speak to Dain. We're back to Dain, finally, after all this time.
Oh, Dain.
Do you trust Dain? Is he telling the truth or is he working with his dad? What's your take on this?
Well, I think psychologically, Dain sits in a very uncomfortable middle space. It's entirely possible he's telling the truth.
Okay.
That he acted on, he didn't act on complete information. And then he trusted authority. That's actually very human.
So you believe him, what he's saying? Like, you don't think he's trying to trick Violet?
I don't think he is. I mean, I think his intentions, were there, but intention and impact are two different things, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So again, psychologically, he sits in an uncomfortable space, right? But even if he didn't know, the outcome's still betrayal.
Yeah. No, yeah, fair enough. But I mean, it's just like, he could be tricking Violet. He could be telling her, I didn't know. And just trying to be friends with her to get more information out of her.
I think he's too much of a rule follower to be evil like that. I don't think he's outwardly evil. I think he's a pawn in the system.
Yeah.
I just don't, he just was too kind and too much of a rule follower. I don't think he's deceptive enough to be a spy.
Okay.
Because spies don't follow rules.
Yeah.
And he's a definite, like, by the book rule follower.
Yeah. Because that's where Violet is, right? She's in that position. She's like, do I trust him or do I not? You have two options really with Dain. One is we trust him. What he says is true. And I think you are in this option, right? You trust that he says that he's true.
Right. But truth is subjective, right? I believe he thinks he's telling the truth. Whether he's being manipulated to get more information or not, maybe he is. You know what I mean? Like putting him in the ring, and I think they would want him to get as much information as possible. But I don't, when someone says things, they truly, sometimes I think their intentions are true.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I think that's what I'm saying, is that his intentions are true. He never meant to do any harm to her. Yeah, like he.
And when he said goodbye, she misunderstood that to think that he was saying goodbye because you're going to die. He just meant goodbye because I see that you're with another man.
Yeah.
But that just comes down to misunderstanding and communication.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And then when he stole her memory, he wasn't fishing for information. he saw it accidentally, like he touched her, it popped up in his head, and then he's like, well, it doesn't make sense. And because it was Dain who was saying it, he immediately had suspicions about it. So he went to his father, who he trusts, right? And he's like, it doesn't make sense. Like, what's happening? Like, do I have to worry about Violet here? And his dad was like, oh, thanks for that. So Dain provided the basis for like whatever happened. So he was obviously guilty, but he didn't do it intentionally. And that's why, and he doesn't even understand, well, he understands it later, like the consequences of what happened, that he gave this. But, before this conversation with Violet, he's like, what have I done? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
So, and as I'm saying, like there are two options for Violet. She either trusts him, like he's telling the truth. He genuinely didn't know. And I think it's because, like, he saw something that didn't make sense. He trusted his father. He acted on incomplete information, right? And then later he refuses to read Violet's memories, right, when in the interrogation. So it's all going into, like, option one. And then we have another option. He's lying and he's more involved, right? So he could be minimizing. He could be aligned with his father and they're trying to bring Violet down together, like actively working against her. He could be trying to regain access to Violet because of that. And his "I didn't know," is a lie. So when we read it...
Even if he didn't know, the outcome is still betrayal and harm.
Absolutely.
And from Violet's perspective, trust isn't just about what you meant. It's about what you did and how it mattered.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when we read this for the first time, we take a guess, just like you did, I did as well. So, so my question to you at this point, do we tend to create a version of someone in our head and then fit their actions into that?
All the time. We don't see people objectively.
Yeah.
We build what we intend, like we build what we're internally working on, and the models that we have of them and the stories about who they are. And once the story is formed, then we're filtering everything through it. So if you believe someone's safe, then that explains the red flags. If you believe someone's dangerous, it's the neutral behavior and it can feel threatening. We're not just observing people, we're consistently interpreting them. And that's why a lot of people would say, oh, Dain would never do that, because that's how we see Dain. So I really don't think his intentions are bad. Although I try to, in my life, interpret people and see people through a rose-colored lens so that I can always see them successful. I can always see them kind. I can always see them, their intentions are good, because I like to bring people up to that level.
Yeah.
And then when they show me that they're not,
then
that's when my story changes.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay,
but
we're done.
But that's exactly why I wanted to, your opinion about Dain, like whether you trust him or not, because, I always had a soft spot for Dain since I started reading the books. I kind of always thought of him as like one-track mind, like a dog, and I always felt sorry for him. So when, book 2 started, I was like, clearly he didn't know what was happening. But you never really liked him, so that's why I was curious about your opinion on him, because you had more of a like unbiased. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't like him not because he was the evil. I didn't like him because he was a coward. And so cowards wouldn't be evil and read their mind and do evil things. He just loved her to the point where he tried to love her in his own little world. That's why I didn't like him. But I did not like him because he's evil. That's different. Like, I don't like some of the professors in the book because they're evil.
Oh,
I don't like
Markham.
them. Markham, yeah. So, yeah.
So then, do we ever really see people objectively, or are we always looking through the lens we've built?
Yeah, I don't think we always see people objectively. We see through layers. So our past experiences, attachment patterns, expectations, even through our fears. So objectivity is more of an ideal than a reality. So what we can do, though, is become aware of our lens, and that awareness gives us that insight and a little more flexibility in how we respond versus reacting to something. We kind of step back and, I have that DBT technique, stop, the STOP.
Oh, okay.
It's
What is it?
stop. It's stop, S, stop. T is take a step back. So if you start to see something or you're not feeling good about something, take a step back, you observe the situation, and then you proceed mindfully. So that you're taking out your lens and you're stopping and you're kind of just reordering, okay, let's just observe what's going on and then proceed mindfully. And that just helps us kind of grasp, take out our filter or acknowledge our filter and then move forward mindfully.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So then how far do we go to protect that version of people that we created in our heads? Like how
Sometimes
much do we...
very far.
Yeah.
I mean, look around. We justify, we minimize, we reinterpret. How many people have been in seriously unhealthy relationships? And I'm not talking even in relationships with like married couples or partners. I'm talking about at work, or in different situations. We justify, we minimize, we reinterpret what's going on because changing our view about someone can be painful, even psychologically painful, especially if that person really mattered to us. So instead of updating our story, we bend it to have that reality fit in. And that's where people stay in harmful dynamics longer than they should. And not because they don't see it, but because they're trying to protect what they believed.
Yeah. It's true. It's very difficult, isn't it? Especially when you find out something about your friends or, loved ones. You're trying to make excuses for them. It's like, oh, but, like either they didn't know. That's the first one. Like they did something unknowingly. Or they had their motives that we didn't know about. And they were like, yeah, it's just, I see that as well. I think I might have made this example when talking about something else, but I was reading the news. It's like a horrible case. The person was on trial for something that they've done, and then they interviewed this person's best friend, and this best friend said, "No way! I don't believe. No way! I've known this person all my life. They would have never done something like that." And it's tough, right, to just compute.
Well, how many marriages, like you never knew that person had another family? You never knew that person embezzled money, or you never knew that person. Our truth about someone and the way we grasp our own reality and how we live our life is a story, and we shape it to make ourselves not feel comfortable, but feel safe, feel accepted. And when you have something good going, you don't want to upset it.
Yeah, it's true. It actually really, really scary. And something like that happens to people, and then they question their whole life.
Yeah.
That they were next to this person. And I think that's why sometimes when infidelity happens, the partner would blame the third party.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this other person seduced my partner. They don't want to blame their spouse, because then it's acknowledging that this person is not who you thought he was or she was.
Right. And, counseling and seeing couples in therapy that have gone through that, you have to really not pull apart the story, but you have to really get down to what's really happening. And sometimes they can make it through. I've seen couples make it through. But you really have to, like you said, you can't blame the third party as much. You can. I mean, there's always those dynamics of everyone. But working through something definitely takes a lot. You have to own every piece of it, every member of it. It's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is like one of the examples, right? When people just hold on to their beliefs and they don't want to let go. And will go really far to protect and explain and to make it fit the story, that they've decided, like, this is how it was. And I know that people do that with their children as well.
Yes.
If there was a fight, something at school, parents being called, it's like, no, it's not my child's fault. No way. My child would never do that.
Yeah.
And they believe that, so.
I love it when I see parents owning up to children and say, okay, well, yeah, they probably did. I love it when I hear that, so that I know that they're being realistic about it, but they're also saying, okay, let's deal with this now. Yeah.
No,
and I love it when their kids surprise them, when their kids turn out to be just beautiful people, and it's just great. I think it's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always
Yeah.
two sides.
Yeah, always, absolutely. Anyway, with Dain, if you already don't trust him, everything does feel suspicious. But if you do
Yeah.
trust him, the exact same behavior can look completely different, right?
Yeah.
And I think what's really interesting with Dain is the position he's in, right? As you said, he is in a very difficult, like, psychological place. His signet is classified. He's close to leadership through his father, right? So he could either know a lot more than he's saying or be in a position where he's being influenced himself. Because we do see that, at least, like, to some extent. The interrogation scene with Varrish. Oh my God, Varrish, like, knows exactly which buttons to push. It's quite scary. And, like, the way he brings Dain in, the way he pushes him, it's so calculated. You know, it's like, do you want to know why she chose him? You know, it's like, it's almost like he's almost like whispering into Dain's ear, you know, at that point. And Dain's just like standing there, you know, he's almost going for it. And it's like he's in some kind of trance, you know, hypnotized. And then he does refuse it. And he walks away. What makes some people resistant to manipulation?
That's a great question. Because resistance isn't just about strength. There's a few key things. So a stable sense of self, the ability to tolerate discomfort, and critically the willingness to question authority. So Dain's moment of walking away is interesting because it suggests a limit. Something in him says, okay, this crosses the line. But what's important is, though, that the line came after the harm had already been done. So resistance isn't just whether you resist, it's when you resist as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because Violet helps him to get there as well. You know, she says no. And I wonder if it wasn't Violet, if it was somebody else there, would he have gone for it? I mean, obviously, Varrish wouldn't have used the same manipulation, you know, because it's not like Dain has a crush on the whole of Basgaev. But like, I wonder where his ethics, and yeah, it's more ethic maybe at this point. And what about systemic manipulation? Like, you know, Markham, do you need the same qualities to resist that? Like, would you say that Rhiannon is a good example of this kind of resistance? Like, does she have what it takes, or is it the same?
Well, systemic manipulation is actually harder to resist than interpersonal manipulation because it's not just one person. Okay. It's an entire environment reinforcing the same message. So this is normal, this is necessary, this is how things are done. And over time, people just internalize that and they just keep going. Rhiannon's a great example of resistance because she keeps questioning. She doesn't just accept what she's told. She tries to make sense of the inconsistencies. And that curiosity is actually a form of psychological protection. So always question, even if you're not supposed to question, just internally question things. Just stay curious, because that's where we grow. That's where we resist. That's how we heal. That's how we accept. A lot of times we might have to change who we are because we're constantly questioning, and that's growth. I think that's that's part of growing, and then we won't get caught up in everything. Not that we have to be conspiracy theorists, but curiosity is definitely a form of protection.
That reminds me actually of our previous episode, right? When you were saying about Mira, that you thought Mira would actually question.
Yeah.
But Mira, like a lot of them, like what, 99%? Well, I don't know, maybe not 99%, but, you know, a high number of riders and cadets do not question. They follow. At least as far as we know.
And this just came to me thinking that questioning comes from the previous knowledge that you have. So you may not question if you don't know the answers, or if you don't know what questions to ask. So like if you're not educated in a certain area, you know, like if someone, Violet knows a lot about the history of things, whereas Mira might have just come in right out of, you know, high school, gone straight into the battlefield, and she wasn't a scribe, so she didn't have a lot of historic knowledge. So she just believes everything she hears, and this is what we do, and this is how we do it, and that's great, and I'm just going to fight, and I'm going to train. Whereas when Violet comes in, she's got this history of knowledge, and when she starts to fight, she realizes, oh, this is what's happening here. She kind of knows why they're doing things. And when they're doing things that she's not understanding, then she questions. I think that's where that comes from.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because they're either different, it's come down to different personalities between Violet and Mira, or it comes down to like nature versus nurture, but also that Violet was trained to be a scribe, so she thought like a scribe, you know, because Mira says that she never really listened to their father, right? Because a lot of like all the Venin knowledge, for example, like the folklore stuff, comes from their father, and he was telling them exactly the same stories. And she kind of just like, oh, I didn't really listen. And it could be just because she was focusing on, you know, I want to fight, I'm a rider. And Violet was taking everything in because she's like, I'm going to be a scribe. Or maybe it's a personality thing. Maybe it doesn't really matter which path they were supposed to go. But Violet was just more curious than Mira, naturally.
I was just thinking while you were saying that, you know, when people go on the battlefield, you have to just not question authority, because then those 2 seconds could get you killed.
Yeah.
So there's that piece as well. You want to make sure that you have the trust and the authority that you've given yourself to as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Question later, you know, but not in the moment of battle, like right there. But then if you are questioning, then you think, oh, shoot, in the battle, is this happening? Is this correct?
Yeah.
And that's where the conversation should happen outside. And you really start to have those difficult conversations.
Mira's a good soldier.
She is a very good soldier.
Yeah. Not saying it in a bad way.
No. Yeah. She wins, and you win as a group, as a team. And a lot of that this is how we've done it. It really helps to have everyone on the same team.
Yeah.
So that's powerful.
So moving on, the other interesting thing that I found in this stretch of chapters is the interrogation portion set up as training. And I was like, how is this training? How? Like, they are dying. Like, you know, if you break, you will die. And even, you know, before that, you basically, you know, your head's being kicked in.
Yeah.
You know, they come out with bruises and with broken limbs. How is this training? And then I thought about Basgaev overall, that everything there is like that. The whole training, if you fail it, it's death. Even when they do a gauntlet, as in they're trying to do the gauntlet, they're still dying. You know, there's still a high chance. And then I was like, oh, you know, maybe that's a military college. It's supposed to be harsh. But no, like, I don't think it's necessary. Like, I don't think that, you know, when you go to military and you go through military training, I don't think you have, you know, 90% chance of dying every day.
No, but when there's venin out there, you do.
Well, yeah. No,
and that's probably what's behind it. Like, we think that it's not necessary, but we don't know the whole truth.
I agree.
So we don't know how serious it is. And I think that's what they're training them for, life and death, always.
I don't think that they're training them for venin, though.
Well, I think subconsciously they are.
Because
I think subconsciously they know what's out there. So they know that the second they leave and the second that they fight, it's life and death, always. It's not just like, oh, we're going to run another drill, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, think about war. Think about that.
No, I agree. But I'm just thinking that in a real life, like not in a book, you try to train your squad, your men, women, your personnel, so that they live until the actual fight, rather than you try to kill them.
Right. That's true. That's true. I think some people, you know, there are accidents that happen, but you're right.
Yes.
I don't think I think there's actual rules, humanity rules. It's not a fantasy.
But they don't question it, right? Like because it's framed as necessary in Basgaev. Like, you have to go through this. It's necessary. So nobody questions that. So my question to you is, what happens when harm justified is necessary? Like, what are we willing to put up with when we believe that this is how it should be?
Well, and going back to before, you were saying this isn't in real life what happens, but we don't have dragons and venin in real life.
No, we don't. But
we don't just jump on a dragon and fly through the air and have a dragon, you know, burn us all to hell. So
Okay,
Right.
well, as an example, like it's not life and death, but let's say you are at work and somebody tells you that you have to do things a certain way, like you have to stay late, to
Yeah.
do something, even though there are quicker ways to do that and you don't have to be sitting there, 12 hours. And,
Yeah.
but you believe that, no, this is like I was told that this is the way it's supposed to be. You kind of,
Yeah.
so you do that sort of damage to yourself, believing that that's necessary. So I'm not talking, you know what I mean? It's not necessarily
Yeah.
life and death, but like we do kind of have, or let's say, in abusive relationship,
Right.
when people believe that that's how it's supposed to be.
Well, so, okay. Well, there's 3 different scenarios here. So this is powerful psychologically. When harm is framed as necessary, people start to participate in their own harm. They endure things, and this has been in tests throughout our lifespan. They endure things that wouldn't otherwise be accepted, but they believe that, number one, it serves a purpose, it's for survival, or it's just the way it is, like you said. So over time, that could lead to desensitization, and one time it felt very shocking, it starts to feel normal. And so this is how systems maintain control, but not just through force, but through belief. So in those contexts, at work, if you follow policy and procedure, that's one thing. If you don't question authority, if that's the way you have to do it, that's the way you have to do it to work within that system. There are ways in those systems to change systems, policies, protocols, depending on the nature of the job. But you have to have the reputation, you have to have the willingness and the relationship with the people in charge to be able to make those changes. And changes aren't made in a day. They're made in like years. So slowly those can shift, but usually those systems are already put in place. And in abusive relationships, sometimes you are in that situation and you endure things either just to keep the peace or in order to make a way of escape. But as we know, it's very possible that you could die if you don't. So that's another scenario that's not just like a job or military. It's life and death in a harmful situation. And there's different cultural barriers. There's different, depending on where you live, depending on what services are out there for you. I know in the UK, when you go into a bar and then you ask for Angela, or you say, they have a way and a system of getting you out of that. Other places don't. So there's systems in place, but it's tricky, and you have to be willing to pay the price in other ways. So it's survival. And some people, either aren't willing to, or they have other risks, like they have children, or they have family, or they have other things that are more important to them, that they would rather stay in a situation that's going to risk their own personal health, I guess, or what they'll put up with,
Yeah, absolutely. I saw this post on Reddit. It was people talking about their childhood experiences, that you have things are done in a certain way at home, and then you go to your friend's house and they do something different. And it's funny because it's true, right? Suddenly you go somewhere else and like things are done differently. And until you know that there is another way, you might not question it. Well,
that's exactly it. And that's what's so beautiful about traveling. You don't know what other cultures, people that travel, people that go to different countries, people that visit different cultures, not just have them come to them, but go to their culture. That's when their eyes open and they realize that this isn't normal here. I'll never forget when I was in Fiji and we had to literally go to the bathroom. There was a hole in the ground because we were up really north, and we were like, no, some parts of Albania and Kosovo and Turkey and those places. You're just driving down the street and you're like, let's go to that, let's go to the stop off at the rest area. And we go off the rest area. We're like, oh, okay. There's a hole in the ground. Okay. In America, you wouldn't ever see a hole in the ground to go to the bathroom. And these little kids would always say, and I was really young, I was like 17, you're rich. And I was like, I'm not rich. I don't even, I'm doing this voluntarily. I don't have a job, but I am rich. I have indoor plumbing. And I never even thought about that. And it's such a good experience for young people and for individuals to travel so that they can see what actually is normal, like you said, to other people, what's normal in different cultures and other people's households. And if you never leave your house, you never leave your town, you never leave your country, you will just think that people that come in are just unusual. And it's really not unusual to them. You're unusual to them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's true. So then what are we willing to put up with when we believe that this is how it should be?
Far more than we think, especially under pressure. So if you believe your survival depends on it, if you believe that everyone else accepts it, or if there's no alternative, then you adapt. You know, and adaptation can look like resilience, but sometimes it could actually look like tolerance of harm.
Yeah. And if Basgaith doesn't mess enough with the cadets already, Jack walks in. Wow.
That was crazy.
Alive and well. What do you think we can expect from Jack at this point? Do you expect him to be, basically, do you expect him to be the same bully as he was before, or do you think there will be like some different story for him?
I don't know. It's very unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
So he represents like something unresolved.
Okay.
Not just like a character, but more symbolically.
Uh-huh.
So when someone who caused harm comes back unchanged, that challenges our sense of safety, right? So we're just not sure. So I think I would expect either escalation, so the threat continues and maybe harsher than we think, or there might be a shift. So where he represents something more complex, like maybe the system got to him. I'm just not sure. But either way, his presence is going to be destabilizing in the environment no matter what we see.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if he would be a changed person because, you know, after someone rained lightning down the mountain on you, I don't see someone going, "Oh, I'm a changed man." But we'll see.
But now we know why Nolan was so exhausted, right? Like that's what kept Nolan so busy, and why they couldn't see him is because he basically was putting him back together, right? Why they did that? Just to see, you know, like how far they can go?
Yeah, or they have plans for him.
That's true as well, yeah.
Because evil does sometimes keep you alive.
Yeah. They do make, I think, a comment in the book that he doesn't look at Violet with malice. Like he looks at her just like normally or whatever.
Maybe he's lost his memory.
Maybe, yeah. Who knows? Yeah.
It's gonna all come back, and he's like, "Oh, that's right. I'm a terrible person. I hate you. I try to kill you all the time."
Who knows? Yeah. But it's also interesting how everybody's kind of cheering for, like, when he walks in. You know, when Violet and her squad are horrified, they're like, ugh. And then everybody's like, yeah. Did you not know him? Like, was he a great guy for everybody else? It's a bit weird. I find
maybe
like
just because someone's alive and they didn't actually die. I don't know. It's a good question.
Just like yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. That was unexpected. And to be honest, when I was reading it the first time, I did not like it. I was like, no. But here's the Romantasy rule for you. Actually, I don't know if it's Romantasy or fantasy but definitely in Romantasy, if there is no body, that means that
they might not be dead.
Yeah. Probably not. Yeah. They're probably alive, you know, so it's quite funny, like, you know, whenever you ask...
Let me see the body!
Exactly, yeah. Like, when you ask authors sometimes, you know, there's an author interview and they're like, oh, is he really dead? They're like, well, you saw the body, like, the body's there. Like, yes, they are gone. That's it. So that caught me. That, like, maybe because it was, like, my first Romantasy novel.
Yeah.
I thought he was gone. Like, I didn't think that he could be back.
Well, we didn't think Brennan would be back either, but...
That's true. Yeah. And they didn't have Brennan's body.
Yeah. That's too bad Liam's body was found.
I know. Yes, there's no coming back from that. I think maybe that's what Rebecca said. Maybe it was about Liam. Like, is Liam actually alive? And she's like, there's a body. Like, he's definitely gone.
Sad day for us.
Sad day for us, absolutely. Okay, well, I think this is where we're going to leave our discussion for today and move to our favorite segment. Who needs therapy this week, Catherine?
Well, I mean, like, we already know that everybody needs therapy in Baskai, but this week I am actually going to take a macro approach and say that the system needs looking at the system itself, because what we're seeing isn't just individual behavior.
Mm-hmm.
It's a culture that normalizes harm. It rewards silence, and it blurs the lines between training and trauma. So when a system teaches people to override their instincts like that, that's where the real psychological damage happens.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can get into policies and procedures and really look at the system, then maybe we can help those that are in it.
Yeah, that's true. It will take a while for us guys.
Oh, years. Yeah, that'll take years.
Yeah.
For sure.
Thank you, Catherine. And before we wrap up, let's look at our Minds Over Magic moments that made us feel.
Yes. So for me, it was those interrogation scenes. So particularly the moment where Violet's being repeatedly broken and mended, it's very damaging, because psychologically it's such a powerful representation of controlled trauma. And it's not chaos, it's intentional. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes it so disturbing. So it really captures what happens when someone's pain is not just allowed, but it's used. Mm-hmm. And that was very, very disturbing. This episode's really very strong psychologically, but you're hitting manipulation, cognitive bias, and systemic harm all at once.
Yeah. I think my moment of the week is probably that truth that Dain gives Violet about 107 scars. You know, when he says that it was your mother who carved them into, and that kind of shock that, oh my God. I know we didn't really talk about it in detail, but it's another thing that Lilith did.
I knew that was coming. I could tell that was coming when he said that. I was like, no, please, her mother. Why are you telling her this? I already know it's her mother.
You guessed it. You guessed that the scars were Lilith's work.
Well, especially then also Mira was like, he's bad news. Well, she knows he's bad news because she probably was there when he was getting those scars. I don't know. Mom doesn't like him. So
no,
Mira knew that. And there was a reason for it. And there's a reason for the scars, but it's just...
Yeah, so he took responsibility for 107 cadets.
Yeah.
And they were like, I don't know why the scars need to be cut in, but there is something behind it. I don't know how it's gonna play out. Because he took one scar for Violet as well. He actually has one more. Because he says that at the start. It's at the start of Iron Flame. Like, I took responsibility for her. So he took another scar. What is this ritual? How does it work? Does it mean that if he dies, or like, I don't know. But I think that we will find out something about it in the future. I think this has meaning. I don't think it's just for...
It's not like it's a tattoo.
Yeah. There is something behind it, some magic behind it. Well, that's it for today. Next episode, we're diving back into Iron Flame and discussing chapters 25 to 30, where a lot of truths are finally shared.
Follow us on Instagram at Minds Over Magic, or email us at mindsovermagicpodcast@gmail.com with your questions, comments, or romantasy recs.
Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share with your fellow magic-minded friends. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and let us know in the comments what you think about these chapters.
And until next time, keep your mind sharp and your heart open.
Bye-bye.